2 words.
Space Force.
No, it's not the name of a terrible sci-fi movie.
It's a joke.
Think armed forces in space. President Trump directed the Pentagon to immediately establish the 6th and smallest branch of the Defense Department. But what the heck is a Space Force anyway? And what would it even do? We have the facts.
It is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance.
Trump's comments may have caught some off guard, but they followed decades of discussion about a separate space force. The idea was first explored by former President Dwight D. Eisenhower after the Soviet Union launched the first satellite, Sputnik, in 1957. Which brings us to Russia. Russia is the only country to have had an independent space force. It was short-lived, but the Russian Space Forces existed from 1992 to 1997 and from 2001 to 2011. In 2015, they re-established as a branch of the Russian Aerospace Forces. The branch provides aerospace warnings, establishes air boundaries, and creates and controls in-orbit space vehicles. China is also building up its space program. The country recently launched a strategic support force, which is meant to streamline and improve its space, cyber, and electronic warfare missions. Both countries have been accused of causing problems with anti-satellite technology, which is why Trump may be pushing for more investment. Right now, it's less about shooting laser cannons and more about collecting scientific data. Congress needs to first sign off on the plan, but their initial response seemed lukewarm. Astronaut Mark Kelly chimed in and called it a dumb idea, and even Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said he was troubled by the approach. The Air Force said it is adamantly opposed to the structure change.
And one of the things everyone needs to understand is how much our daily lives are dependent on space infrastructure, and our military operations are intertwined with that.
The U.S. already spends about $611 billion on its defense budget each year. That's more than the next 8 countries combined. Despite this, some say we're light years behind when it comes to developing a means to destroy or disable satellites. And this is important because it could be the future of warfare. There's a lot we don't know about space, but there's a very real possibility that human conflict on Earth could spill over into the final frontier, though it's unclear what that would look like.
Would this help or hurt? We're talking about a military organizational question. That is, what is the best way to organize the already existing space forces of the United States?
Real-time surveillance, guided sun strikes from orbit, and the protection of future trade and travel routes could all become areas of concern. Right now, there are tens of thousands of satellites in orbit. This kind of equipment helps the U.S. and others communicate with one another. It can be used by militaries to track enemies, take pictures, and guided missiles. Without a presence in space, it's much harder to fight on the ground. That's why countries are investing so much into it. But the crux of this debate is how to best manage space activities. It's a bit unclear if the creation of Space Force would lead to another space race, where countries would rush for dominance in spaceflight. Trump's comment may spur an important conversation about exploring the cosmos, and that's a conversation worth launching.